The mahogany dining table had been in my family for 3 generations. Every Sunday at precisely 6 o'clock, we gathered around it for dinner. My mother set the table with her grandmother's china, the kind she only used for real family occasions, as she called them. I arrived at my parents' house with my 2 children, Marcus, 15, and Lily, 8. Lily had been with us for 6 months now, and the adoption would be finalized in 3 weeks. She held my hand tightly as we walked up the familiar stone pathway to the front door. "Remember what we talked about?" I whispered to her. "You belong here just as much as anyone else." She nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. My family hadn't exactly welcomed the news of our foster placement with enthusiasm. My mother had made several pointed comments over the phone about keeping bloodlines pure and not knowing where these children come from. My father opened the door, barely glancing at Lily before turning his attention to Marcus. "There's my grandson. Come help me with something in the garage before dinner." Marcus looked at me and I gave him a subtle nod. He'd been my rock through this entire process, protective of his new sister in ways that made my heart swell with pride. Inside, the house smelled of roasted chicken and my mother's famous herb stuffing. My sister Jennifer was already seated in the living room with her husband, Todd, and their 3 children. My brother David sat in my father's recliner, scrolling through his phone. "Oh, you brought her," Jennifer said, not bothering to hide the disapproval in her voice. "Her name is Lily," I said evenly. "And yes, she's part of our family now." My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes swept over Lily with the same expression she used when examining produce at the grocery store. "Dinner's ready. Everyone to the table." We filed into the dining room. I'd counted the place settings earlier when we arrived. 9 plates for 9 people. The math was right, but something felt wrong. My mother began directing everyone to their seats with the precision of a military general. "Jennifer, you and Todd here. David, you're at the end. Marcus, next to your grandfather." I guided Lily toward 2 empty chairs together. Before we could sit, my mother's hand shot out. "Not there. That's Jennifer's usual spot." "There's another seat right here," I said, pointing to the chair beside Marcus. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. She walked to the kitchen and returned with a folding chair, the cheap plastic kind we used for overflow guests at Thanksgiving. She placed it against the wall, several feet from the table. "She can sit there." The room went silent. Even my nieces and nephews stopped their chatter. "Mom, there are empty chairs at the table." "Those are for family," she said simply, as if explaining basic arithmetic. I felt Lily's hand tighten around mine. I looked down at her, and she was staring at the folding chair with the kind of resignation that no 8-year-old should ever have to feel. "She is family," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. My father cleared his throat from his position at the head of the table. "Your mother set the table the way she wants it. Let's not make a scene." "I'm not the one making a scene." Jennifer sighed dramatically. "Can we just eat? Some of us have to get the kids home at a reasonable hour." I pulled out the chair next to Marcus. "Lily, sit here." My mother's face flushed red. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and physically grabbed the back of the chair I just pulled out. "Foster kids don't belong at the family table," she sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. Everyone froze. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Lily didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stood there, her small hands still in mine, staring at the plate of food she'd never get to touch. Then Marcus, who had been sitting quietly through the entire exchange, calmly pulled out his phone. His fingers moved across the screen with purpose. "Grandma," he said, his voice remarkably steady for a 15-year-old, "want me to show everyone the real family will?" My parents' faces drained of color simultaneously. My mother's grip on the chair loosened. My father set down his water glass so hard it sloshed onto the tablecloth. "Marcus, put that away," my father said, but his voice cracked. "Why?" Marcus asked innocently. "I think everyone should know the truth. Especially Aunt Jennifer and Uncle David, since they keep talking about their inheritance shares." Jennifer sat up straighter. "What is he talking about?" Marcus looked at me and I gave him a small nod. We'd discussed this possibility. I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this, but my mother had finally crossed a line I couldn't uncross. 3 years ago, Marcus began, still holding his phone, when Grandpa Joe died and left everything to Mom, Grandma and Grandpa were really upset. Remember that, Aunt Jennifer? Jennifer's eyes narrowed. Of course I remember. Dad contested it. Said Grandpa Joe wasn't in his right mind. Right, Marcus continued. And the whole family fell apart for about 6 months. Everyone fighting over money and property. My brother David leaned forward. We all know this story, kid. What's your point? My point is what you don't know. Mom settled everything. She gave Grandma and Grandpa the lake house outright. She gave Aunt Jennifer 40% of Grandpa Joe's stock portfolio. She gave Uncle David the commercial property in downtown that now rents for $35,000 a month. The room had gone completely silent now. Even my young nieces and nephews sensed something important was happening. Mom kept only one thing from Grandpa Joe's estate. Want to guess what it was? No one answered. The trust fund. The one Grandpa Joe set up that pays for this house's mortgage, Grandma and Grandpa's living expenses, Aunt Jennifer's kids' private school tuition, and Uncle David's car payments. Marcus paused. Mom is the sole trustee. Has been for 3 years. My mother's hand flew to her throat. That's not, you can't. I can pull up the documents right now, Marcus said, tapping his phone screen. Mom made me co-trustee last year when I turned 15. It's all legal. She wanted me to understand financial responsibility. My father's chair scraped against the hardwood floor as he stood abruptly. Now hold on just a minute. Sit down, Dad, I said quietly. My voice had that edge I usually reserved for difficult clients at the law firm. Let him finish. Marcus continued. The trust agreement is really specific about how the money can be used and who qualifies as beneficiaries. Grandpa Joe was very clear. He wrote that funds should only support family members who demonstrate compassion, integrity, and unconditional love toward all family members, especially the most vulnerable. Jennifer's face had gone pale. What does that mean? It means, I said, standing up and putting my arm around Lily, that the trust can be terminated for beneficiaries who fail to meet those standards. It's not automatic. As trustee, I have discretion. But discrimination against a minor child, especially a foster child who will legally become my daughter in 3 weeks, that's pretty clearly against Grandpa Joe's wishes. My mother finally found her voice. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? I met her eyes directly. You just told my 8-year-old daughter that she doesn't deserve to sit at the family table. You brought out a folding chair like she's some kind of overflow guest at a party. What exactly do you think Grandpa Joe would say about that? The silence stretched out. I could see the calculations happening behind my siblings' eyes. Jennifer's kids attended a private academy that cost $48,000 per year per child. The trust paid for all 3 of them. David's lifestyle depended entirely on that rental income, since his own business had failed 2 years ago. And my parents? They lived in this house mortgage-free because the trust paid the remaining balance of $16,000 per month. Their car, their country club membership, their twice-yearly vacations, all funded by the trust distributions. This is blackmail, my father said, but there was no strength behind it. No, I corrected. This is consequences. For 3 years I've paid for your lives without asking for anything in return. I didn't even tell you the truth because I didn't want it to change how you treated me. I wanted your love to be genuine, not purchased. I knelt down next to Lily, who was still standing frozen in the same spot. But I won't let you hurt my daughter. Not for money. Not for anything. Jennifer stood up suddenly. This is insane. You're going to cut off the whole family because Mom made a seating mistake. A seating mistake? Marcus's voice was sharp. She literally said foster kids don't belong at the family table. That's not a mistake. That's who she is. Todd, Jennifer's husband, put his hand on her arm. Jen, maybe we should. Shut up, Todd. Jennifer's face was red now. You're really going to take away my kids' education over this? I'm not taking anything, I said. I'm giving you a choice. Apologize to Lily. Mean it. And agree that from now on she is treated exactly like every other grandchild in this family. Or the trust distributions stop next month. My mother made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Marcus pulled up something on his phone and turned it toward my father. That's the trust document. Section 12, subsection C. The trustee may terminate benefits to any beneficiary whose actions demonstrate cruelty, prejudice, or willful harm to vulnerable family members. Mom has every right to do this. My father's hands were shaking as he read the screen. I watched the realization settle over him. This wasn't a bluff. This was real. Lily, my mother said, her voice strangled. I apologize. That was inappropriate. Try again, I said coldly. And this time look at her when you say it. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but I felt no sympathy. She walked slowly across the room until she stood directly in front of Lily. I'm sorry, she said, and this time she did look at my daughter. You belong here. You're part of this family. Lily looked up at me, uncertain. I nodded to her. It's okay, Lily whispered. No, I said. It's not okay. But it's a start. I looked around the room at my family. These people I'd loved my entire life, who had shown me exactly who they were when it mattered most. Here's how this works from now on. Lily gets treated like every other grandchild. Same presents at. Same attention at birthdays. Same seats at the same table. If I see any difference, any at all, the trust distributions stop. Permanently. You're destroying this family, David said quietly. No, I replied. I'm saving it. Or at least I'm saving the part worth keeping. I pulled out the chair at the table and guided Lily into it. Then I sat down beside her with Marcus on her other side. Now, I said, picking up my fork, let's have Sunday dinner. As a family. My mother served the food with shaking hands. The meal was silent except for the scraping of silverware on china. Jennifer left early with her family, barely saying goodbye. David sat through the entire dinner, staring at his plate. As we were leaving, my father stopped me at the door. Your grandfather would be proud of you, he said quietly. I'm sorry it took this to make us see clearly. I nodded but didn't respond. Words were cheap. I'd spent my whole life listening to words. It was time to watch actions instead. In the car on the way home, Lily finally spoke. Are they going to be nicer now? I don't know, I told her honestly. But if they're not, it won't matter. Because we don't need them. Marcus leaned forward from the back seat. We're our own family now. The three of us. Lily smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her all day. 3 weeks later, the adoption was finalized. My parents sent a card with a small gift. Jennifer's family didn't acknowledge it at all. David sent a text message with a generic congratulations. But it didn't matter. Because on that courthouse day when the judge declared Lily legally mine, I looked at my 2 children and knew I'd made the right choice. Some things are worth more than money or family approval. Some things are worth everything.